Hello, I am the cartoonist M. Rashid. This cartoon could be considered a sequel to the one I made referencing Robert Townsend's Hollywood Shuffle, and with the concept of mass media projecting how they want Black Americans to be presented, you know, and uh, the white directors and white producers discouraging Black actors from being themselves and insisting that they act out this stereotype version of Black Americans from that uh, impression that all white people do with Black Americans, the same accent, the same, you know, like they're all doing a character, the Black character. Whether they're conservative or liberal, they all do the same character. And in film and movies, they always insist that all Black actors do that character because they need the character to be Black, you know. So this doesn't stop at just the entertainment side, but it continues in the educational diversity, equity, and inclusion materials too. Or remember at the beginning of that, the push for that, we find those two Black guys sitting in that Starbucks that time, and they got the police called on them, and the hoopla that came from that. The CEO of Starbucks, to his credit, was genuinely put off by that whole thing and embarrassed for his company. And it's like he was clearly not that guy in how he responded. His instinct was to make it okay monetarily. That was his instinct. He I gotta talk to these guys. I gotta how can we make this right? He wanted a number so he could make them okay. And it was the ADL that stepped forward and said, whoa, 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 whoa. Before we set that kind of precedent with that person for this reason and destroy all of Western civilization in the process, let's not do that and we'll handle it. So they put together the materials and passed it out to the entire Fortune 1000 and beyond, which became what we know of as the diversity, equity, inclusion annual training that everybody got to take if you're employed. And inside of that material, you will find that they skip over the explicit bias that actually triggered this whole thing and focus in on implicit bias so that they can all lives matter it. Everyone feels this way. Everyone has this deep tribal thing that we all have, and we have to learn how to manage it better so we don't hurt each other. And the propaganda, indoctrination, visuals that they show for it are never the two Black guys who actually were assaulted by this thing. It's everybody else. And often, well, let's say every single time inside of the same material, the Black person is always the face of the one in the wrong. So they're steering that entire ship away from what actually happened, what actually happens to benefit literally everybody else. So you're vilifying me in these materials. So they immediately ran and leaped in between the CEO of Starbucks and Justice. I'm like, whoo, whoo. Justice almost happened. Can't have that in America. Woo. That's what happened. So now every time you see those kinds of materials, you'll notice that they the melding of that black caricature with giving everybody else a buoy of humanity and still treating me like the classic stereotypes that they invented for me and continue to push even in that material. This is important. It's important because let's revisit the 1866 Civil Rights Act and what it means. It means that now that I'm no longer a slave, I'm supposed to be economically equal with the former slaveholder. That's what it means. That I'm supposed to also be able to do business and be okay and thrive and get lucrative government contracts, and everything he can do, I can do. That's what that act gives me. The counter to that act is monopoly, locking me out of access of the markets deliberately. The problem with that is, even though they blatantly violate antitrust all the time, get their racketeering, like colluding gatekeepers from multiple industries and multiple institutions and multiple government bodies to cover up this wrong, to allow this wrong to happen in direct violation of the Civil Rights Act, it's wrong. So eventually that's going to come back and bite them. So proactively, they created a grift that they've agreed to inside of their racketeering like bubble that they'll pretend is a real thing. Anybody that wants to be employed in the system and stuff has to agree with this thing. So to pretend that I am economically included into the system and equal with whites, even though they've destroyed my market share, my access to capital, they've destroyed with the monopoly my ability to compete. So they pretend they're in compliance with the 1866 Civil Rights Act by giving blacks affirmative action jobs inside of white-owned monopolies. And they pretend that's the same thing as being economically equal in compliance with that act. If you're a billionaire, I'm a billionaire. If you're doing well, I'm doing well. You have lucrative government contracts, I have a lucrative government contracts. Equal, looking each other in the eye, equally successful. That's what the 1866 Act means. It does not mean I'm a peon cog inside of your megalithic white-owned monopoly. But they're pretending that's what it is. And the entire diversity, equity, and inclusion program is feeding that grift. So inside of a white-owned monopoly, they're trying to make it look like it's balanced with, the different people. Everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody inside of that tower is elevating the white-owned monopoly and making it look like it's fair when the entire system has been usurped by bigness, and it is not fair. Fairness is breaking up the monopoly, strictly enforcing antitrust, giving the Black American his equity, the return of his inheritance wealth stolen from him in the form of a robust reparations program, and economically including him in the wealth building ownership class that he's been deliberately locked out of for the last 400 years. That's what fairness and justice and the spirit of what DEI is supposed to be. Instead, it's a weapon of white supremacy pretending otherwise. And in your materials, I'm still the clown stereotype that you've been pushing all the time, and now I'm the face of evil inside of your material. You're still on brand as a white supremacist while talking this trash. Peace.